Hello, Chase.
Hello, how are you doing?
How's it going?
Not too
Um,
bad. Not too bad.
yeah, sounds great. I'd like to begin by having you describe to the audience what you're doing at Altamont and what you have been working on in the past so that they have a better sense of what you do.
Yeah, sure. I'm a vice president at Altamont. I've been here for about 4.5 years. And we are a middle market private equity firm here in Palo Alto. And for the uninitiated, what that means is that we are managing money on behalf of other investors. Think pension funds, high net worth individuals, sovereign wealth funds, endowments like Stanford's. We're managing money on behalf of folks like that. And what we do is to take that money and invest it in companies that we think are good investments that are likely to grow, and that after some period of time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, we can sell those companies and then quote unquote harvest our investment in them and return a multiple of money back to our investors, or our limited partners, what we call them, which would be the Stanford's endowments and pension funds and the like. As far as my role here as a vice president, the easiest way to think about that is as what we would call sort of a deal quarterback. So if you think about the universe of companies that you can buy or that you can invest in, there are millions of companies across the United States and North America, which is where we spend most of our time. And we are reviewing thousands of investment opportunities each year. And from those thousands of opportunities, we'll ultimately only make 2 to 3 investments in a given year. And so filtering those, and once we do find one that we're interested in potentially investing in, running the process to invest in the company, which will oftentimes take 3, 4, 5, 6 months in order to complete, because you have to do your diligence, you have to structure all of the contracts and all of the legal paperwork. You have to come to an agreement on price and terms with the seller, whoever it is that you're investing with. But I'm responsible for helping to manage and to run and coordinate that process. And then that's about half of what I do. The other half is managing or helping to manage and oversee the investments that we currently have. So you can think of it as 50% being dedicated or devoted to looking at new investments, and the other 50% of my time is spent working with our current portfolio companies, whether that's going to boards of director meetings, um, uh, helping them to streamline their operations or to capitalize or recognize growth opportunities, that sort of thing.
Awesome. And how does that translate to your day-to-day work? What does your typical day look like, and what's on your calendar tomorrow?
Yeah, so most days, and it'll depend and it'll fluctuate based on time of year, and I guess at a high level, I should say that I think one of the things that I like about the job is that it's dynamic and that every day is a little bit different. So no one day is going to look like another in terms of what it is that I'm doing and who it is that I'm spending time with. But to take an example, or to take today just as an example, I had a few phone calls for new businesses that we were looking at potentially investing in, and the way that works is an investment banker or someone else who is helping to manage an investment process or manage a sell process. So if you had a business that you were selling or you were seeking capital, you would hire someone to help you go out and raise that capital or to facilitate that investment, and they would put together a set of materials that they would then take to market. We work with those folks, the investment bankers of the world, to identify those opportunities, and then we'll do phone calls with them to learn more and to figure out if we're interested. And so I did a fair amount of that today, and then I had a handful of phone calls for existing companies that we're invested in, helping them to manage through some things or to again capitalize on some opportunities. To take another example, though, last week I was in Detroit for a management meeting. So, in addition to doing the phone calls for these businesses in which we might be investing, if we get really serious, and if it's a company that we like, and that it seems like we might be at least in some preliminary agreement on terms with the seller, then we'll actually fly or go to wherever it is the company is based and meet with the management team or meet with whoever it is that's selling the company to learn more about it, to walk around a little bit in their offices or to go and see their manufacturing operations. So, in the case of this business, it was a fabrication business that did fabrication for the parts that you would see on heavy construction equipment that might be at a mine or at a highway construction site. And so we actually spent time with the management team, learned about the business, and then went to their fabrication facility and walked around a little bit to get a feel for what they do. So again, different within any given day, but hopefully that helps to give you a flavor of what it's like.
While you were at Stanford, what did you study and when did you graduate?
So I was a history major. I did a BA and an MA in Russian and Soviet history. And I graduated in 2010 with my undergraduate. In 2012 was my master's.
So it seems like you get to talk to a lot of people, see a lot of things happening, think about many different kinds of problems, maybe in many different industries as well. What kind of growth opportunities did you find at Altamont?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to join the firm at a time when we were small, and so naturally, with a smaller firm that's growing, there comes substantial opportunity, and so there was a chance for me to take on responsibility through that avenue or through that dimension. The other way that I think we facilitate growth for younger folks or for analyst associates and vice presidents is through recognizing the fact that private equity, unlike some other careers or occupations or professions, is very much an apprenticeship-based business. There's not a book that you can pick up and read that's going to teach you how to do private equity. It's something that you have to learn through experience and through watching those who do know what they're doing, watching them work, watching them operate. And so I think that dynamic or that aspect of the industry and of the business is something that we appreciate. And so there are deliberate and sort of calculated step-up opportunities that people have as they get older and they learn and they grow and they progress through the firm. And so it's a fun part of the job. Getting to embrace those step-up opportunities, and on the flip side, I think it's really exciting at the point that you start to have people working for you, you start to manage people, to teach them, to train them, and to give them their growth and their step-up opportunities.
While you were at Stanford, in either classes or as part of your extracurricular activities that you found yourself, what are some things that you did that you think helped you and are helping you right now to be in the position you are in right now?
Yeah, so I think like I said earlier, there's a tremendous amount of dynamism within this job. There's lots of different companies you're looking at any one time, lots of different things going on within your portfolio companies, and so being able to manage and balance all of that is very, very important. So being organized is critical. And I think just generally being a student at Stanford with all of the demands that requires in terms of your curricular activities. And then most people there are also very extracurricular or have a lot of extracurricular involvement. So I played football while I was there. But other folks are in the band or in a cappella group or have other organizations that they're a part of, and so taking that time management and that organizational capability and then bringing it to the working world, I think was something that really prepared me for this job. The other way that I think a history degree in particular prepared me for this job was I talk about investing in new businesses. Part of what we have to do as part of that process is, I may have a company that I think is interesting and that I'd like to invest in, but I have to make the case for that business to the rest of the investment committee here, right? Because we're 25 people, and anytime that we want to write a $75 million or $100 million check behind the business, we have to go and we have to make the case. We have to justify that investment to the rest of the investment committee, and so we have to prepare materials as part of that. And I think what I've learned and what I've found is that putting together those materials, coming up with an investment thesis is actually very similar to writing a history paper. When you think about what you do as a history major, you come up with a perspective on a particular event or a particular person or a particular time period. You come up with a thesis, right? And then you have to sort through lots of disparate information, secondary and primary sources, in order to come up with the pieces or the legs that are going to support that thesis, the evidence that's going to support that thesis. And putting together an investment thesis is actually not all that dissimilar. You're looking through reams and reams of financial data. You're doing industry calls or developing perspectives on industry and macroeconomic dynamics. You're learning everything that you can about the company, figuring out where the opportunities there are, and so you're digging into operations, lots of detailed data there, and so you filter through all of that in order to come up with the support for whatever your investment thesis is, and then package that up tightly, cleanly, and have to articulate that to your investment committee. Again, not dissimilar from the way that you might have to do in a term paper for a history class.
What are the trends in the private equity industry, and how should students that are coming out of Stanford right now or studying at Stanford prepare themselves for the private equity industry?
Mm-hmm. I think the one trend that is probably most notable or most important for Stanford students who are interested in the field to know about is the fact that there are a lot of firms now who are starting to hire directly out of undergraduate. Historically, the model had been to hire people who had 2 to 3 years of either investment banking or management consulting, that is McKinsey, Bain, BCG, 2 to 3 years of experience in either one of those two fields, and then to bring them into private equity. Over the last couple of years, ourselves, along with several other firms, have started to hire directly out of undergraduate, and so being in tune to that and understanding the way that the hiring calendar works, and getting your foot in the door early, I think is really important and is of immediate importance, or it's immediately relevant to students who are interested in going into the business.
Undergrads without the industry experience, what could they include in their resume from school to highlight their experience or have competitive advantage over other candidates?
Yeah. So, we look at thousand resumes every year, and as you can imagine, most everyone who submits is very qualified. And so, I think anything that you can do in your cover letter or in the lead up to the submission of your application to demonstrate that you have a unique interest in Altamont or whoever it is, whoever the firm is that you're applying to, I think is very important. So I would always encourage people to do your research ahead of time, look at the company's website, learn what you can about the company's current investments, what their investment philosophy is, what their investment strategy is, and try to really tailor your approach, because we obviously want to work with people who are excited about what it is that we're doing. So other than that, I would say obviously having past experience on your resume in either finance or strategy helps. But if you can show me that you've done something in the past that maybe is very different, as my past experience was very different when I applied to Altamont. I'd never worked in investment banking. I'd never worked in consulting. Uh, Interned at law firms previously, and then again was a history major. But I was able to communicate and convey my passion for those fields, my passion for what it is I had done previously, and why I had thought that that might be where it is that I wanted to be long term, and then to articulate again a clear story for how that path had then led me to private equity. And I think if you're able to do that, then you'll be just fine.
The last question I want to ask you today is, how would you describe the work and environment of Altamont, maybe in relation to Stanford or other companies?
Yeah, so I think the easiest comparison is to other private equity firms, or maybe to investment banking. So I think you'll find that, and this isn't to paint with too broad of a brush or to be too stereotypical, but I think you would find that if you were to go and talk to people who worked at either private equity firms or investment banks on the East Coast, there's a very rigid and hierarchical structure there. And it's not to say that we don't have structure and we don't have hierarchy, but we maintain what I would call an open door policy. So, um, you know, again, we're a small firm, 25 people, but you as an analyst, which would be a first year position, will oftentimes have an opportunity to interact with and be around the most senior folks at the firm, managing partners and principals, because again, we appreciate the fact that this is an apprenticeship-based business, and we want to make sure that the people at the lower levels are getting the experience that they need. And I think, unfortunately, that's not something that's often a focal point for other firms. And so it's a very, again, a very open type of culture, and it's very collegial, very collegial.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No problem at all. It was a real pleasure.